The Moral Basis of Cooperation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Catherine. The Moral Basis of Cooperation by Mohandas K. Gandhi. Paper contributed to the Bombay Provincial Cooperative Conference, September 17, 1917. The only claim I have on your indulgence is that some months ago I attended with Mr. Ewbank a meeting of mill hands to whom he wanted to explain the principles of cooperation. The chawl in which they were living was as filthy as it well could be. Recent rains had made matters worse, and I must frankly confess that, had it not been for Mr. Ewbank's great zeal for the cause he has made his own, I should have shirked the task. But there we were, seated on a fairly worn-out charpai, surrounded by men, women, and children. Mr. Ewbank opened fire on a man who had put himself forward, and who wore not a particularly innocent countenance. After he had engaged him, and the other people about him, in Gujarati conversation, he wanted me to speak to the people. Owing to the suspicious looks of the man who was first spoken to, I naturally pressed home the moralities of cooperation. I fancy that Mr. Ewbank rather liked the manner in which I handled the subject. Hence, I believe, his kind invitation to me to tax your patience for a few moments upon a consideration of cooperation from a moral standpoint. My knowledge of the technicality of cooperation is next to nothing. My brother, Devadar, has made the subject his own. Whatever he does naturally attracts me, and predisposes me to think that there must be something good in it, and the handling of it must be fairly difficult. Mr. Ewbank very kindly placed at my disposal some literature, too, on the subject, and I have had a unique opportunity of watching the effect of some cooperative effort in Champaran. I have gone through Mr. Ewbank's 10 main points, which are like the commandments, and I have gone through the 12 points of Mr. Collins of Bihar, which remind me of the law of the 12 tables. There are so-called agricultural banks in Champaran. They were, to me, disappointing efforts, if they were meant to be demonstrations of the success of cooperation. On the other hand, there is quiet work in the same direction being done by Mr. Hodge, a missionary, whose efforts are leaving their impress on those who come in contact with him. Mr. Hodge is a cooperative enthusiast, and probably considers that the result which he sees flowing from his efforts are due to the working of cooperation. I, who was able to watch the efforts, had no hesitation in inferring that the personal equation counted for success in the one and failure in the other instance. I am an enthusiast myself, but 25 years of experimenting and experience have made me a very cautious and discriminating enthusiast. Workers in a cause necessarily, though quite unconsciously, exaggerate its merits, and often succeed in turning its very defects into advantages. In spite of my caution, I consider the little institution I am conducting in Ahmedabad as the finest thing in the world. It alone gives me sufficient inspiration. Critics tell me that it represents a soulless soul force, and that its severe discipline has made it merely mechanical. I suppose both, the critics and I, are wrong. It is, at best, a humble attempt to place at the disposal of the nation a home where men and women may have scope for free and unfettered development of character, in keeping with the national genius, and, if its controllers do not take care, the discipline that is the foundation of character may frustrate the very end in view. I would venture, therefore, to warn enthusiasts in cooperation against entertaining false hopes. With Sir Daniel Hamilton, it has become a religion. On the 13th January last, he addressed the students of the Scottish Churches College, and, in order to point a moral, he instanced Scotland's poverty of 200 years ago, and showed how that great country was raised from a condition of poverty to plenty. There were two powers which raised her, the Scottish Church and the Scottish banks. The church manufactured the men, and the banks manufactured the money to give the men a start in life. The church disciplined the nation in the fear of God, which is the beginning of wisdom, and in the parish schools of the church the children learned that the chief end of man's life was to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. Men were trained to believe in God and in themselves, and on the trustworthy characters so created the Scottish banking system was built. Sir Daniel then shows that it was possible to build up the marvelous Scottish banking system only on the character so built. So far, there can only be perfect agreement with Sir Daniel, for that without character there is no cooperation is a sound maxim. But he would have us go much farther. He thus waxes eloquent on cooperation. Whatever may be your daydreams of India's future, never forget this, that it is to weld India into one, and so enable her to take her rightful place in the world, that the British government is here, and the welding hammer in the hand of the government is the cooperative movement. In his opinion, it is the panacea of all the evils that afflict India at the present moment. In its extended sense, it can justify the claim on one condition, which need not be mentioned here. In a limited sense, in which Sir Daniel has used it, I venture to think, it is an enthusiast's exaggeration. Mark his peroration. Credit, which is only trust and faith, is becoming more and more the money power of the world, and in the parchment bullet into which is impressed the faith which removes mountains, India will find victory and peace. Here there is evident confusion of thought. The credit, which is becoming the money power of the world, has little moral basis, and is not a synonym for trust or faith, which are purely moral qualities. After 20 years' experience of hundreds of men who had dealings with banks in South Africa, the opinion I had so often heard expressed has become firmly rooted in me, that the greater the rascal, the greater the credit he enjoys with his banks. The banks do not pry into his moral character. They are satisfied that he meets his overdrafts and promissory notes punctually. The credit system has encircled this beautiful globe of ours like a serpent's coil, and, if we do not mind, it bids fair to crush us out of breath. I have witnessed the ruin of many a home through the system, and it has made no difference whether the credit was labeled cooperative or otherwise. The deadly coil has made possible the devastating spectacle in Europe, which we are helplessly looking on. It was perhaps never so true as it is today that